Hello and welcome back. We're looking at the Q4 2025 edition of Altus Now.
And it is good to be back. When we look at these Q4 reports, especially in the corporate world, they're usually just a lot of patting on the back. It's the victory lap before the holiday break.
Right, the highlight reel. Everyone talks about how they crushed it.
Exactly. But this one feels different. If you've been following the energy and logistics landscape in Malaysia, and really globally, you know that 2025 wasn't a victory lap. It was more like an obstacle course run in the mud.
An obstacle course is a polite way to put it. It was a grinder. So the mission for this deep dive is to see how a company actually navigates that. We're going to walk through the pages of this newsletter from the front page headlines to the operational details.
And the theme is right there on the cover. A year of strength, teamwork, and resilience. Now, resilience is a word that gets thrown around a lot in boardroom. But as we unpack these sources, I think we're going to see that for Altus, resilience meant something very, very specific.
It meant pivoting. I mean, we're looking at a company that's known for moving massive oil rigs and dealing with heavy marine logistics. But in this update, we're seeing them manage high-tech drone operations in Hong Kong. And I kid you not, becoming a certified partner for TikTok Shop.
It's a fascinating spread. It shows a company that's trying to be 3 or 4 things at once to ensure stability. You have the traditional heavy engineering reactivating the Hakuryu 16 rig. You have the geographical expansion joining a mission to Timor-Leste. And then you have the digital pivot with AFM fulfillment.
It's a lot to cover. But before we get into the gears and the grease and the mealybugs, which we will definitely get to, I want to start where the newsletter starts. The chairman's message.
Mohammed Bustami, yeah.
Yes. I read a lot of these executive summaries, and usually they are very polished, everything is fine. But he starts off with this incredible honesty. He says 2025 left them with mixed feelings. He explicitly lists the challenges. Slow business, severe competition.
Lower revenues.
Lower revenues.
That transparency is rare, and it's vital. If you're a leader and you pretend that a down year was actually great, you lose the trust of your team immediately because the people on the ground know it was tough.
Of course they do.
By acknowledging the unconducive environment, as he calls it, he validates their experience.
He uses this great idiom. What happened in 2025 was already water under the bridge.
Water under the bridge. It's a classic phrase, but it captures a very stoic business philosophy. You can't change the revenue numbers from last quarter. You can only control what you do next.
Right.
He pivots immediately to what he calls a new resolute for 2026.
A new resolute. I like that. It's about shifting the mindset from we survive to we are ready to grow. And it is worth noting, amidst all the mixed feelings, they hit a massive milestone.
The 15th anniversary.
15 years. In the tech world, that's ancient.
Absolutely.
In the energy services sector, that is? Well, it's solidly middle-aged.
It represents stability. Think about what the last 15 years have held. The 2014 oil price crash, the global pandemic, supply chain crises, and now the slowdown of 2025. For the team to steer the ship through all of that and still be standing, that is the definition of the resilience they're talking about.
And to keep that ship moving, you need a crew that's on the same page. The newsletter mentioned some interesting internal culture stuff before getting to the business updates, Thursday talks, and a day in my career.
These are the soft skills that support the hard skills. When you're a logistics company, you have people scattered everywhere in ports, on rigs, and offices. It's very easy for silos to form. Thursday talks, where they dissect the core values, is about ensuring the person in the boardroom and the person on the tugboat share the same language.
Exactly. It connects the dots. But, okay, let's get into the field. I want to go through the business updates, starting with the aviation sector, because this is where I learned something new about biology.
You're referring to the battle against the mealybug.
The mealybug. So Altus Aviation secured a contract for aerial spraying covering 10,000 hectares. That is a massive amount of land. But they aren't just flying planes. They are doing a trial for a new nozzle. Why?
Because the mealybug is a very, very clever pest. In oil palm plantations, these bugs don't just sit on the top of the leaf where it's easy to spray them. They congregate on the underside, near the veins. They hide under the canopy.
So if you use a standard sprayer, the chemical just hits the top of the leaf and the bugs are safe underneath laughing at you.
Essentially, yes. You're watching the roof, but the problem is in the basement. So Altus is testing a nozzle configuration that creates a specific kind of turbulence or mist size to ensure underleaf spray penetration.
That is some serious precision engineering. You're flying a helicopter, dealing with wind and speed, but you're worried about coating the underside of a leaf.
It moves them from being just a delivery service to being a technical solutions provider. They are solving the biological problem for the client. But even the best technology has to bow down to Mother Nature.
The monsoon?
The monsoon is the undefeated champion of Southeast Asian logistics. The report notes that adverse weather significantly narrowed their flying windows.
I can imagine.
They managed to complete over 2,300 hectares, which is a lot of flying, but they had to make the call to reschedule the rest to January 2026.
And that links back to the chairman's point about resilience. Resilience isn't just pushing through no matter what. It's having the discipline to say, it's not safe, we pause, we finish strong later.
That is operational maturity. But while the helicopters were grounded by rain, the innovation team was looking at a different kind of flying. Did you catch the update on Canard by ITE?
I did.
Altus even attended the Airspace Asia Pacific 2025 in Hong Kong to discuss this.
It's a fascinating pivot. They were taking their aviation expertise but moving it into high-tech infrastructure management.
It's a blue ocean move, finding a new market where the competition isn't as fierce yet.
Okay, so we've been in the air. Now let's drop down to the heavy stuff. The heavy lifting section in Johor. This is where we see the scale of what they do. The Hakkari 16.
The Hakkari 16 saga, for those who haven't seen one, this is a jack-up rig. It's a floating city of steel. Altus was responsible for the foundation setting, specifically installing 8 reels of steel wire ropes.
And when we say wire ropes, we aren't talking about something you buy at the hardware store.
No, not at all. These are massive, heavy cables that are crucial for the rig's operation. Installing 8 reels of that is a major engineering feat. But the part of the story that really stood out to me wasn't just the installation. It was the departure.
December 5th, the rig leaves the port.
Right. Moving a rig isn't like backing a car out of a driveway. They had to coordinate 4 harbor tugs. The lead tug was the Boka Sherpa. Mr. Zulfadli, Mr. Luthfil, and Mr. Izzat emphasizes the final preparations, collecting documentation, verifying port clearance, dealing with authorities.
The paperwork.
The paperwork. It is the unsexy side of logistics. But you can have the biggest tugboat in the world, and if you don't have the port clearance stamp, that rig isn't going anywhere.
Good point.
The unseen work of compliance is just as important as the horsepower of the tugs.
That is a great point. We see the big ships, but we don't see the guys running around with clipboards, making sure the big ships are allowed to leave. And speaking of busy ports, Johor sounded like a beehive. They were also supporting RedTech offshore with the vessel Southern Star.
It was a hub of activity. They mentioned coordination meetings with MMHE and Johor Port Berhad. That alignment is the product. They are selling the ability to coordinate all these moving parts without them crashing into each other.
Okay, speaking of moving parts, and specifically maintaining them, I want to take you to the East Coast, talk Bali. Because for me, this was the visceral story of the quarter. The sling greasing project. They had 2,000 meters of sling. That is 2 kilometers of heavy industrial cable, and it needed to be greased manually.
And context is everything here. It's November in TikTok, Bali.
Which means the monsoon is hammering them.
So you have heavy rain, high humidity, wind, and you have to apply grease to these steel cables. The report describes the team specifically mentioning the yard assistants and freelancers using shaded areas to try and protect the slings from the rain while they worked.
So why is this so critical? Why can't you just leave them rusty?
A sling is the lifeline of lifting operations. If corrosion gets into the core of the wire rope, it weakens the integrity. So this is actually a critical safety redundancy.
I love that the newsletter called it the sling greasing story, almost like an epic battle. It really highlights the grit of the team on the ground. It wasn't about the executives in the AC, it was about the guys in the mud.
It fits perfectly with their participation in the HESS Monsoon Safety Campaign. They aren't just reacting to the weather, they are actively training for it.
Moving up to Kimaman and Labuan, it seems like the theme there was steady traffic.
Very much so. At Kimaman Supply Base, you had the Ina Fortitude and the MV Beacon Altair. The tasks listed are the bread and butter of port ops, pilotage, freshwater bunkering, loading anchors.
The report mentioned loading 4 anchors, 15 tons each.
Again, the scale. You casually say loading anchors, but that's 60 tons of steel being moved. It's routine for them, but it's heavy industrial ballet.
But look at Labuan. The focus there was slightly different. It was about the human logistics. crew sign-off for the MV Southern Star.
This is a critical part of the industry that people forget. Ships are run by people. Seafarers are often out for months at a time. Getting them off the ship through immigration and onto a flight home and getting the fresh crew on board is a complex dance.
Right. Mr. Sazzle and Ms. Correa were managing this.
And if you mess that up, you have an exhausted crew operating dangerous machinery, or you have a ship stuck in port waiting for a captain. Managing the human element is just as hard as managing the cargo.
It's a good reminder that behind every one of these ships were people who just want to get home to their families. Speaking of people traveling, let's zoom out to the commercial update. Because Altus leadership wasn't just sitting in KL. They took a big trip in Q4. They went to Timor-Leste.
This is the strategic pivot I mentioned earlier. They joined an export acceleration mission organized by Matrade.
Timor-Leste is a small island nation north of Australia. Why is a Malaysian logistics giant so interested in them?
Because it is a petrol state in the making. The newsletter drops a staggering statistic. 90% of Timor-Leste's national revenue comes from oil and gas.
90%. That's an intense dependency.
It is. But for a service provider like Altus, it's a target-rich environment. The Malaysian market is mature, it's saturated, everyone's fighting for the same contracts. Timor-Leste is an emerging frontier.
So they went there to shake hands.
High-level hands. They met with the vice prime minister. They engaged with Timor GAP, the national oil company. They are planting seeds. They're building relationships with Sundigas and the National Petroleum Authority.
It's a classic move. When your home market slows down, you go where the grape is.
Exactly. And I noticed the managing director, Mr. Taufik, even hopped on a podcast while he was there, the IP Business Podcast.
It's very meta, isn't it? Us talking about him talking on a podcast. But it shows a modern approach. You have to be visible. You have to tell your story.
Speaking of modern and telling stories, we have to address the biggest surprise in this entire report.
Oh, I know what you're going to say. AFM fulfillment.
Yes. We have been talking about 15-ton anchors, offshore rigs, and helicopter spraying. And then on page 9, we see that AFM Fulfillment has been certified as a TikTok Shop fulfillment partner.
It feels like a glitch in the simulation. From oil rigs to viral leggings and makeup kits. Why do this?
Diversification. Pure and simple. The oil and gas industry is cyclical. It goes boom and bust based on global prices. E-commerce, specifically TikTok Shop, it is exploding.
Sure.
It provides a steady, high-volume cash flow that isn't dependent on the price of crude oil.
But the logistics must be totally different.
Completely. Oil and gas logistics is low volume, huge weight, high risk. TikTok fulfillment is massive volume, tiny weight, high speed. The fact that Altus has a division capable of achieving certification for this shows they are building a very flexible engine. They aren't just an energy company anymore.
It's smart. If the oil price crashes, people are still going to buy stuff on their phones.
Exactly. And to support all this, the new markets, the new products, they mentioned a sales training program. Transform your sales for life.
I like the phrasing for life. It implies they aren't just teaching you how to close a deal this quarter, they are teaching you a mindset.
Solution-based selling. In a down market, you can't just be an order taker. You have to be a problem solver. You have to walk into a client's office and say, I know you're hurting. Here's how I can fix it. That's a very different skill set.
We're coming into the home stretch here.
Let's move to the final section, support services, HR, training, and QHSE. And one thing I love about these deep dives is finding the specific people who are getting recognized.
It's so important. You can't have resilience without dedicated people. They highlighted a training module called Transform Your Sales for Life with 21 participants.
I love that title. Not just Sales 101, but for life.
It implies a mindset shift. But the real highlight for me was the 10-year service awards.
Yes, we have to shout them out. Mr. Chewan Mohammed Izzat bin Chewan Badari from the Kimaman branch, and Mr. Reenli bin Henry from Labuan.
A decade of service. In an industry that faces slow businesses and tough competition, keeping talent for 10 years is a really big deal. It speaks to that sense of belonging the chairman wished for.
And on the safety side, which we know is boring but critical, they were busy. They appointed OSH coordinators, Mrs. Farahani and Mrs. Dorina, and they sent staff for BOFA training.
BOFA stands for Basic Occupational First Aider.
Why is that specifically important?
Because of where they work. If you're out in the yard in Kimaman moving heavy steel or handling chemicals for the nozzle trial, an ambulance might be 20 minutes away. Having a colleague standing next to you who knows CPR or knows how to handle a crush injury can literally be the difference between life and death.
They also mention environmental compliance. Mr. Isidore completed SIPSWAM training.
That's Certified environmental professional in scheduled waste management. Remember the grease, the waste from the rigs. You can't just throw that stuff in a dumpster. You need a certified pro to manage it legally.
They also did an emergency evacuation drill at the Kale office.
The report says it was successfully executed, which builds muscle memory. In a real fire, you don't want to be guessing where the stairs are.
Now, before we wrap up, I have to mention the social side.
That's right. The friendly rally against McDermott.
They sent 4 teams each.
And that connects right back to the chairman's quote about all work and no play. McDermott is a huge client in the industry. Building relationships with them isn't just about successful meetings. Sometimes it's about sweating it out on a court together. It humanizes the business relationship.
When you step back and look at this Q4 report as a whole, what's the big picture here?
I think the Q4 report tells a story of a company in transition, or maybe a hybrid company. They're managing their legacy, the heavy, difficult, muddy work of oil and gas, and they're doing that well with 0 incidents, but they are aggressively layering the future on top of it.
They're planting seeds in different fields?
Exactly. They're in Timor-Leste looking for new oil markets. They're in Hong Kong looking at drone regulations. And they're in the digital cloud handling TikTok orders. They're trying to be robust against any single market failure.
It's a really smart strategy. If one engine stalls, the others keep the plane flying.
Precisely. And that brings us back to the chairman's wish for 2026. He asked for a year defined by teamwork and togetherness. Looking at the diversity of what they're doing, they're going to need that teamwork more than ever.
To the team at Altus, congratulations on surviving a tough 2025. We want to echo the chairman's sentiment. Replace the negativities with positivity.
Here's to a resilient and successful 2026.
Thanks for listening to the Altus Now Q4 newsletter. We will catch you on the next one.
Goodbye.